We're going to call to order the November 16th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council and Financing Authority and Redevelopment Successor Agency. We're going to begin tonight as we do each week with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight's going to be led by Councilmember Bill Christoph.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of existing litigation, Barrero versus the City of West Sacramento, and one item of exposure litigation. No action was taken on either of those. That brings us to our general administration agenda, item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, under this item, the council is prohibited by state law from having a discussion or taking action on issues brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum on items within our jurisdiction. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a clock that we use to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard, and so we ask that all the comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. And also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that simply indicates which item the council is currently considering. We take the yellow request cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. Once the council questions and the public comment have begun, we don't take any additional speaking requests. So if you're here about a particular item, please be sure to get the speaking card in before the end of the staff report. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause some anxiety. It's not natural to them. So we do ask that there not be any boos or cat calls or even any demonstration or applause. We try to maintain a civil discourse in the chambers. So with that, we have a few requests to speak under item 1A. And the first is by Forest Gardens.
Mr. Mayor, he just stepped out with his little boy. He said he will be right
Okay,
back.
we'll come. Edward Castorena.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I just wanted to get some information on Bright Park. You said that there was going to be a 2x2 meeting with the Washington School District, and that you were looking for $1 million grant and $300,000 from Groupie. Who's working on it? How's it going? Is the school district receptive to this? Those are all questions I think that need to be answered. Is the plan going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. John Bisharian?
Will there be a report coming out about it? That's another one.
Mr. Mayor, lady and gentlemen of the council, relax. I have come to praise Christoph, not to bury him. I want to thank this man because 30 years ago last January when I moved here from the city, he was my postmaster at the Little Bright Postal Annex. And we got to talking, and this, that, and the other, and he started keeping me informed about different things going on in this community before we were a city. Measure B still rings a bell, if anyone's familiar with what that was all about. Later on, when I met my fiancée in '92 and she passed in '93, I had her boy. And Bill was very instrumental in me being able to keep him and become his court-appointed legal guardian. For that, I will always be grateful. By the way, he just turned 29. Yes, they used to call me young and foolish, Bill, but they just don't call me young anymore. You'll understand soon enough. I also want to thank this council for doing something that I had requested a number of years ago because that boy taught me that skateboarding is actually a sport. And that is putting in one of the suggested 3 skate parks, which it seems to have fallen somewhat disrepair, but it's still there. I would still like to see the council see its way clear to putting one in the north area, as you now call us, and of course in Southport, so that the younger skateboarders don't have to cross busy streets to get to a skate park. It would be greatly appreciated at some point. In fact, I think the boy would be available for consultation on how to design a real skate park. Other than that, Bill, you have done a tremendous job, as has the council for this city. It has really surprised me and pleased me to see it turn around the way it has. Helping to form the Brighton Broderick Community in Action Network is a big boost to this community, and thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Maria Grijalva?
Good evening. I wanted to thank you for adding the term website, to your website, the live streaming, the term live streaming, because in addition to the public access channel, we're going to try to start trying to Facebook live stream these meetings. And so in light of the president-elect phenomena that we have going on, and in light of the West Virginia mayor that made those really derogatory comments regarding high heels, and in light of the school teacher in Los Angeles that made some really derogatory comments to students. They were actually like 11-year-old, and the teacher was telling them that they were going to get deported. And in light of some past Facebook comments that were made, I think it's important that as a community that we speak up and make a statement regarding how we feel about the situation that we're in nationally, and then of course how it would reflect locally. And so to that end, the Washington Unified School District released a statement for all the students, parents, and teachers that I'm hoping someone else will be reading. But the city of Sacramento, the county of Sacramento, and also Yolo County have passed resolutions and are listed as sanctuary cities with the Department of Homeland Security. And so I would love for us to consider being listed on the list of sanctuary cities, where, because I do know that we have at least 1,000 DAPA eligible immigrants that are subject to being deported, and we have at least 500 UC Davis students that are DACA. And so anyway, so I'm hoping that we can declare ourselves to be a sanctuary city, and I hope to follow up with one of your offices with that. In addition, I wanted to take the last couple of seconds to mention the West Capitol Avenue Streetscape Master Plan that included a whole bunch of crosswalks, and I wanted to follow up with that, being that we had 7 deaths on West Capitol Avenue. And so I'm going to be following up, I hope, with someone regarding this master plan. It includes pedestrian crosswalks at on a regular, and on regular locations or regular corners. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is Forest Gardens, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, when the
We understand, we totally understand.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, I don't, but everybody else on the council fully understands.
Gotcha. Thanks. So I do stand up Monday nights, and I've always wanted to say, Your Honor, and members of the jury, but I'm not sure if that's really something we do here. Anyway, yeah, my name is Forrest, and I recently moved into a mobile home park for the first time in West Sacramento. And I like to consider myself the face and the voice of those folks that live in mobile home parks. And so you might say, hey, look, you're a sharp-looking guy, and it doesn't really fit the model of folks that live in mobile home parks. We just got placed out of the regular housing market. We found a house, built it, and dropped it. Okay, why am I here? So So the thing is that I've personally visited all 17 parks that are here and knocked door to door. I've visited about 10% of the city's population and have said, look, I'm struggling with our management. They really have us over a barrel. When you move your house in, you're in a spot where you pay space rent, you own the house, but you don't own the land, and it's really difficult sometimes to work with managers that are a few fries short of a Happy Meal. So the thing is that I'm here today because I'm imploring the City Council to look at rent control. I know you guys looked at this a couple of years ago, and it probably puts a bad taste in your mouth. And you might say, hey, look, you're one of the sharpest looking guys in here, has some nice shoes. What are you worried about with money? I'm an executive assistant. This is just my urban warfare gear. I'm an average guy, and it looks like your average citizen here runs about $36,000 a year, probably bringing home about $2,200. So in the mobile home parks, they're constantly raising rent by 3% each year, and it's compounded. So the money that we're giving to the parks, we can't invest in our own homes to keep them up. So my prediction is that, according to my math, in about 14 years, you guys are going to have a situation where we're not going to be able to stay in our homes. And I'm thinking it's going to be about a generation, because if it goes up 3% compounded, look, I know the parks are a for-profit agency, and they're here to make money. I get that. It's a source of affordable housing, and it's close to downtown Sacramento, where a lot of us commute and stuff. All right, so the thing is that at least if you guys can't do rent control for everyone, at least maybe the seniors. These folks are cutting pills, trying to make ends meet, and these guys are getting their rents jacked up left and right, and I'm hoping that you guys would relook at that whole issue, because we're dying out there. We're dying. Thank you.
All right, and Angela Grijalva?
Good evening, all. I want to thank you first for this handout. This is a great handout. I actually called into the city to find out about how I might participate in city council meetings, be more informed, and this is great. I'm glad you guys did this. Thank you. I was recruited to bring to you the message from the Washington Unified School District, and the message goes: Dear parents and guardians and friends of the Washington Unified School District, we know that the results of the recent presidential election have been reason and concern among many of our students and families, stirring up feelings of anxiety and questioning what kinds of impact this will have on their lives and their homes. Sorry, this is a hard issue for a lot of us here in Sacramento. While our nation's leadership is in the middle of transition, it is imperative that we continue to work together as a community to provide stability for our children, because that's what our responsibility is. Our children need to be successful. They need to feel safe. Our great school and community is made up of people from different backgrounds, cultures, languages, and religions. We embrace this rich diversity, and we accept the responsibility of ensuring that our schools and our classrooms continue to be safe places where all students can remain focused on a successful future. Our schools and are the cornerstones of our community. We must continue to be kind and treat all people with dignity and respect, not allowing the results of this election to dictate our behavior in the classroom or in the community. The district has always been and will continue to remain focused on maintaining safe and inclusive schools for our students to thrive in. The Washington Unified School District is fully committed to supporting our students with any reservations or concerns for their future. Each school has a support system and staff in place to help our students with any anxiety or fear. Each school is staffed with a part-time social worker and outreach specialist, in addition to our teachers, campus, safety monitors, support staff, and administration. And this is for everybody. Please talk to your children about the safety and support staff available at their school. Our employees stand readily to support and help. If your child is encountering any sort of discrimination, behavior, or bullying, we encourage that you report the incident to your teacher and school principal. So I thought that was important, and everybody should hear it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so those are all the requests we have under item 1A. I believe I saw the Director of Parks and Recreation conferring with Mr. Castorina about the status on the Bright Park work, and just to, I'm not sure what she said, but the key report out from is that the school board took up the item after the last council meeting, and consistent with the 2x2 conversation, enthusiastically have supported all the actions necessary in order to move forward with that grant application, which has been submitted, and now we're crossing our fingers that we'll be successful in that grant application. There was only a direct question. We've had the comments on the mobile home park issues. We did have I think 3 of us were on the council during that period, and former Mayor Wes Beers chaired a task force that dived very deeply into the issues. And all of the comments that Mr. Gardner made about the nature of the economic conditions, the severe challenges of affordability and predictability and livability were raised at that time. And we struggled as a council, as well as our housing commission and our staff, with what solutions are available. The legislature has given us very limited and very conflicted authority in that domain. And so rent control has very limited scope under state law. So for example, if you did rent control, you have to provide for annual increases, you have to provide for increases, based on other market conditions. It has to apply to everyone. You couldn't just simply say seniors as an example. So the level of authority that was, and the tools that we had, are fairly limited. So that task force identified a set of things that we could do, and to try to use our leverage in the market of mobile home park owners to try to improve the situation. But we don't have as many direct tools that really work to be able to tackle the problem in that direct sense. This is true for most of the things that the city does, where we are not as all-powerful as we sometimes as sometimes they can appear. We have very limited power and limited resources. But we're always looking for more ways to be helpful in that domain. And so I hope Mr. Gardens will share with us and with our housing staff under Aaron Laurel in that division, the findings that you've had, both from your own research and from your conversations with residents throughout the various parks in the city. So that it's not that the issue's closed. It's that we exhausted all the solutions that were available to us. But we're certainly open to and would welcome folks who have new ideas or new developments that would give us the tools to be able to be helpful in that situation. All right, so with that, we're going to proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening? Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Age-Friendly Advisory Committee met on November 15th, and we heard 3 presentations. One was basically the progress of the work in coming up with the ultimate report that is going to be coming out of this committee. We heard a presentation of services of YOLO Healthy Aging Alliance, which is essentially an organization that provides a collaboration, a connection for a lot of the different services that are available for aging folks in Yolo County. And then also a presentation update of the AARP activities in West Sacramento. And one of the interesting things is we had a presentation on a Meals on Wheels survey and compared that, and this is all, what are the needs and what are the desires of folks that are in the Meals on Wheels program, and also the AARP survey, and we're kind of matching those and looking at, what are the priorities, and it really is becoming evident that, it is a question of aging, about categorization if you're 50 to 65, 65 to 75, and, those types of age categorizations, but it also is within that group, you also have issues of mobility and issues of being able to do things in your daily life. So you could be younger and still have these mobility issues. You could be older and have no mobility issues. But, one of the key things that's coming out is housing and transportation. I think we probably all knew that. But transportation's a little bit interesting because the folks that basically are not homebound in the Meals on Wheels type situation, which the folks in Meals on Wheels tend to be, because, you know, that's the reason why you have Meals on Wheels, to help the folks get the food that they need. Folks that have, that aren't limited to that, their need for transportation is to go out and do volunteer activities, or go out in the community, and that type of thing. Whereas the folks on Meals on Wheels is more basic than, you know, it's going to doctor's appointments. It's just really basic. So you see this, these different groups that have these different needs, but there's transportation's a common link. Transportation could be, you know, how do you get to your doctors? It could also be, well, we need a good sidewalk to get to the bus stop, or we need a good well-lit street at night so we can start walking around. So it was good. Things are starting to gel a little bit. It'll be next year before this all comes together, but it was actually a very good meeting.
Were you going to add anything to that, Mayor Pro Tem Sandine, about that meeting? Or,
I'm making a report.
Okay, so I think council does, I serve on the statewide AARP task force on livable communities, and we also met 2 weeks ago, and covered a lot of the same ground that you just described, as well as some key, some sort of what AARP should be doing at the state legislative advocacy level. But I would say that at one point in the meeting, I noted that West Sacramento was the second city in California to join the AARP National Network of Livable Communities, and the AARP staff quickly inserted, yes, that's true, San Francisco was first, but that West Sacramento we were the second to join, but we were the first to actually get to work and start getting real action and real results, and it was a testament to the committee, certainly to John Robinson and other staff who have been pouring their hearts into this work. But it was the ARP team kept coming back to West Sacramento as an example for other cities across California in terms of the work that we're doing on the general plan and many other dimensions of this. So the work of that advisory team and of the staff and all the community members that have been participating is definitely getting noticed. So terrific, thanks. Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you. This past Monday, we had a meeting of the Yolo County Transportation District. On the agenda were a couple of things. One is how the district is working through some changes in the natural gas fueling requirements, working with the Department of General Services on a natural gas pooling system. So they'll be pursuing joining that, as well as we received an audit regarding YCT service and other district-related matters. The district fared very well. In fact, a lot of their kind of qualitative findings were around how the district is running really well, comparable to like cities or like-sized districts, I should say. So the findings are really good, and not surprising, the area the recommendation was around special services, bus service, which means paratransit service, which we know is one of the rising costs related to, it's one of the few vehicles to kind of get elderly folks around. And so the district, we've asked the district to start looking into solutions, other solutions that we might want to pursue to help lower the costs of paratransit. So we'll be hopefully taking that up as the district has hired a new planner that might be able to help work on that. Finally, we did get an update from the district on the Y shuttle. As you recall, the YCTD started the Y shuttle process, which begins in Woodland and Davis and comes through West Sacramento and provides for West Sacramento, is a free shuttle across to events at the Golden One Center. And so far, it's been, the district has reported some really good success. And they put out some numbers through 9 events. They measured through October. Nearly 2,000 riders have come through on the Y shuttle, probably an average of 200 per event. The high was about 426 riders in one event, and that was for the second Paul McCartney concert. But other than that, they've already started to make some adjustments, but I think were appreciated by some. They're starting to figure out timing-wise. I know I heard from at least one constituent who recognized that the shuttle started at the very end of the event every 30 minutes, and they realized people left events early. So it wasn't just one person, but it was
I heard from her too.
But there were others that were having similar complaints. So they actually started adjusting that time frame so it's more frequent coming through. And so far, that's had good response. They're also going to start doing a little more marketing in Woodland and Davis. From those who rode from Woodland, there was very good qualitative feedback, but they're thinking about consolidating just the stops and marketing it more. I think many people just didn't realize they can take it, and one of the cheap fares. And one of the things I did provide feedback on they're going to look into is the confusion that happens as they pick up, because there are still folks who are wanting to come back to West Sacramento, go through the route system, and I witnessed it firsthand on one of the times I took it, folks who are still working late in downtown. And the bus is there and they want to take it, and because of the fare differences between a regular route, fixed route, and the Y shuttle, just made for probably an unattended conflict there. So we're going to try to resolve that one about how we can make it easy for them to catch it and get out of downtown while the bus is there and not wait for the regular bus route. So some really good feedback. I think the rest of the board and the district was really happy with the service, and I want to thank city staff again around partnering with YCTD to make that happen. But that's the update for us.
Mr. Kristoff.
West Safka met this morning, or 2 o'clock this afternoon. And that's the flood protection agencies. The main function we had was we opened the bids to do the levee work. All the engineering, design, and all of that stuff is completed. So we've opened up the bids, and there were, I believe, 6. And one bid came in, the lowest bid came in at $49 million. Well, that was a lot less than the second bid, or the third bid, or the fourth bid. And so, anyway, we were pretty excited about that. But when you start talking about that kind of money, people really look at what was requested and what was the bids, and what did the lowest bidder say, or what did they calculate. And there are a number of contested bids from the various other companies that wanted to bid. And so we are looking at going through all of the bids and looking at the issues that were raised and see how credible they are. And so we will be coming back and vote on that, probably, I'm going to say the end of this month. Anyway, that was a little disappointing because I want to really get it out of the way. But at the same time, we have to cross every T and dot every I and make sure that we follow the rules and regulation and the bid process. So it's really a good bid from a price perspective, because it allows us to tackle a couple other areas that we will be able to fix without going back to the voters, or going to Washington, or going to the state. And so we're looking forward to seeing what the issues are with the bids, and hopefully they're all rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kristoff. And Mayor Pro Tem Sandin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Water Resources Association of Yolo County met on Monday, and we received a briefing from DWR on the Lower Elkhorn Basin Levee Setback Project, which proposes to widen the Sacramento and Yolo bypass. And there is a proposed connection into or with the Deep Watership Channel. So I think we'll definitely want to keep our eyes on that project as it's moving forward. We also received a legislative briefing and an update on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act progress in Yolo County. And similar to AARP, Mayor, as you heard, we've been watched as in Yolo County is moving our plan forward, which is due in June. And on Monday, I was elected as chair of the Water Resources Association for 2017. And so that happened. The Regional Water Authority met last Thursday, and we were provided with a detailed water efficiency update and a preview of mandates that may be forthcoming and will affect us. We also were informed that the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency withdrew their membership from the Regional Water Authority. And so we may be, I need to ask some more questions. We may be the only Yolo County municipality that's still connected with the authority. So another thing for us to be thinking about. On Monday, October 24th, I attended the launch of the Early Learning Kits program at the Arthur F. Turner Community Library, and this is a project between the city and the Yolo County Library, and it offers parents and child care providers with kits that are bundles of books, puppets, boards. It's pretty much a whole month of training and teaching and learning for early child care or child education, and there are themes like wildlife or stories, relationships, and I actually went to just see them in person, and they're available to be checked out at libraries throughout Yolo County, but our program Up for West Sac and the city had a great partnership with the library system. And finally, I had the great honor and pleasure to participate in a news conference at Riverbank Elementary School on October 26th, which was part of the Flood Preparedness Week, and we shared West Sac Flood Protects award-winning school outreach program, and the students there, we did a chant together, plan, pack, protect, and we also signed a pledge. I want to thank two staff members in particular, Greg Fabian and Paul Hosley, who have brought the pledge with me for me to share with you and hold up tonight so you can actually see it. I won't make you do the chant, however, but I'll show you the pledge.
I think at one point we've all done this chant.
I know.
With the children. So.
So there you go. Show and tell. That's my report.
All right, I just had one. That's the Bike Share Steering Committee met a week or so ago. This is a project that's managed by SACOG, but the steering committee is comprised of elected officials from the city of Sacramento, the city of West Sacramento, and the city of Davis, which is where the initial bike share system will be deployed. Mostly around the campus at Davis, mostly along the riverfront areas in Washington and the Bridge District in West Sacramento, initially in the Civic Center, and then mostly in the grid, and to a lesser extent in East Sac and Land Park in Sacramento, and Oak Park in Sacramento. Council is where we did an RFP and solicited proposals from a variety of companies from around the world to manage and operate the bike share system. And we have been negotiating with our preferred partner for the last several months. We're not quite done, but it is, the operator is a company called Sobi. They're a Bay Area-based bike share operator. And they were selected for a variety of reasons, but one of the keys is that their bike share technology is the technology is on the bike. So I know that most of the council and a lot of our staff and many of our community members have used bike share systems in other places. Those generations of bike share systems, the technology is actually at the dock, and so the bike is just it's a dumb bike that then plugs into a smart dock. In this situation, the GPS, the payment system, and everything will be on the bicycle itself, and that has a lot of potential. It has a lot of actual benefits for the system, in that it will allow us to do a couple things. One is to create essentially virtual docks and stations. So, for example, if there's an event, let's say we had a TBD Fest again, right? So and we're not going to install a physical dock there, but you could, using the geofencing technology with the bikes, set an area that is a pick-up and drop-off location for bike share bikes. And then it's gone when you turn it off. So you can create a docking system that doesn't require the physical docks in every case. You could also allow, and I've ridden these bikes in Atlanta, and you can allow them to be picked up and dropped off anywhere. So where you might pick up the bike at a station, ride it to I don't know, Ortega West. So you're gonna ride your bike share, you're gonna go all the way to Ortega West, and you might just leave it there. There's no dock nearby, but you leave it there. Then the way the bike share system would operate is that it would be much cheaper for the next rider to pick the bike up there. So as an incentive to put it back into the mainline system. So these are both pretty important advances in the bike share arena. We would not be the test case, so this is sort of cutting edge, not bleeding edge technology. But really, all the bike share systems going forward are heading in this direction. We'll also be experimenting with a set of electric bikes, or electric assisted bikes, for bike share. Those tend to be very popular in places with hills, which we don't have, but we do have heat. And so for folks in dresses and suits during hot days, or for whatever reason, having the electric assist, at least as a test case in this situation, will allow us to see whether that increases ridership and value and usage for our citizens. So that's the basic outline of the system. It'll be 900 bikes at the first rollout at about 1,800 dock points, of which, and I forget the number of stations, but there'd be about a half a dozen stations at the beginning here, a little more than that in Davis, 8 or 9, and the remainder in the grid, ESAC, Land Park, and Oak Park, while we're proving the case. But the other reason for the smart bike technology, it allows us to say, you know what, it would work. Maybe we could succeed with a dock at the Sycamore Trail, or at the Barge Canal access, or somewhere else. But rather than having to just on faith go install one and see if it works, this way we could create a geofence station there, test it out, and if there is actually the ridership, then go in and install a full-blown station. So that's the basics of the system. We have some initial grants and other funding from us, a small amount of money from us and the other cities. And by small, I want to say we put in $17,000. I mean, it's really, really small. The total cost of the system is going to be just over $3.2 million at the rollout. We are working on a bunch of sponsorship leads for the title sponsor. Nike, Citibank, and a lot of companies are the primary funder of these systems in other places, and then the user fees as well help to support them. But this doesn't require an ongoing general fund commitment from any of the cities. So we're in the sponsorship negotiations now, and we're wrapping up the final negotiations on the contract. Once those two things are done, then we anticipate, and our contract requires the operator to have launched the system within 7 months of that time. So it would be working quickly on right-of-way acquisition, station installation, bike acquisition, and that sort of thing within those 7 months. So our target is the summer or potentially early fall, but summer of 2017 for that project to move forward. So our staff has been a fantastic partner along with SACOG and the other cities in order to advance this, but we've made a lot of progress in the last several months on moving that forward. Yes, Mr. Johannesson.
In terms of the inventory of bicycles, will there also be three-wheeled? Because I know a lot of older folks would probably utilize this because they're use trikes and there's a balance issue or risk of falling. Is that contemplated?
At least not on this initial rollout. And we actually didn't ask for the electrics. The proposals that came back, most of them included some form of electric bike, but it wasn't on our original specs. But no one had proposed the three wheels. So we'll need to look at that in a future iteration. The other policy issue that council should be aware of is at the last SACOG meeting, I think Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, and Citrus Heights all wanted to know, so in 2018, does that mean we'll be able to expand to them? And no, it doesn't mean that. But the issue of exactly how expansion proceeds. Within the service area that we're already working, the decision about where to put new stations will be essentially a joint decision of the city, the host city, and the operator. So that's because it needs to make sense for our land use, transportation, and other objectives, but it also needs to make sense from an operational basis because we don't want to just put bikes in a station there that nobody rides. So it's a joint decision of us two within the framework that the steering committee has put together through SACOG. But then this question of, okay, what about Natomas, what about Rancho and other places? We've got to work that out, but we're designing the finance system in such a way that that's prioritizing this system first. And if another city wants to add in later, they're welcome to, but they're gonna have to cover the cost of that. We're the ones proving the case and making the core of the system work, but the other cities are gonna have to step up at some point. So. All right, if there's no other reports or communications, item 1C is appointments to boards and commissions. I do have one appointment. I'm going to appoint Andrea Lepore to replace Martha Guerrero on the Planning Commission. Andrea is currently the alternate commissioner on the Planning Commission. So I'm making that appointment, ask if there's a motion to approve. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries. And then just a reminder, the deadline, actually, I'll just turn it to the clerk, who has all of the dates and details. If you could remind the council and the public what the process is for the appointments of the main set of appointments for the 2017-2018 term.
Yes, we're currently accepting applications for all seats on all boards and commissions. Applications are available on the city's website or by contacting our office. They are due to us by Friday, December 2nd. After that date, we will be getting a complete packet to all of the council members for consideration, with the anticipation of the appointments being made during the first meeting in January.
So it's just a reminder, and because I see that Councilmember-elect Orozco is also here, that the applications as they come in are provided to the council under our custom and practice and procedures. Each of the council members are invited to, they are asked to review the applications and then invited to make nominations to the individual commissions as well. And then, as the clerk indicated, and I forget what the timeframe will be provided to the council about that, because I need enough time to review the nominations
Yes.
to make the appointments.
Yes.
And bring them to the council at the meeting in January. So, Mr. Ledesma?
Just a question, so you're going to communicate back out the timeframe on when we, okay.
Yeah, we adopted an administrative policy about this a couple of years
Yeah,
back.
I'm just trying to
with all of that.
remember what it is.
We don't do it often enough that it's like memorized.
Exactly.
But, it is during, so it's a challenge, because I know, several council members and I, we try to interview, it's impossible to interview all of the applicants, but we do try to interview many of them. And it's a challenge during the holiday season, but in order to get the appointments done by that meeting in January, so the commissions can be up and running and fully functioning.
Yep.
It's necessary, so. All right, so with that, we're going to proceed to item 2, which I'd like to delay to item 24, but we don't have a choice. And that's the presentation of proclamation recognizing the achievements of Councilmember William G. Christoph. First, is there a motion on the proclamation?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Ledesma. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And I know we have, the council has at a ceremony held earlier, a couple of weeks ago, had an extensive honoring of Mr. Christoph, both by the council and by Carol Richardson, who is here, Charlie Moore, and many friends, family, supporters, neighbors, beneficiaries of Mr. Christoph's service and leadership. So we're not going to show that whole video since it's several hours long, but we do want to we did want to take this evening to recognize Mr. Christoph. I thought at first I would present him with a couple of his recognitions. First is the proclamation itself, and I know I'm not going to ask you to come up there. I know how you. All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's do this right. So this is.
Just say there's a couple whereases, and that'd be good.
I will do that, because I'm going to do that only because I know each of the council members has a 1 or 2 sentences to say as well. So rather than repeat all the whereas clauses, but there's no good one to lead off with, is there? Well, let me pick the main one. So Bill served the city for 30 years in many capacities on the council, including as mayor and as mayor pro tem, served on the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency Board, and helped lead the city's flood protection initiatives, including the massive Southport Levee Protection Project. He's emphasized fiscal responsibility, made sure that the city always made financially sound and prudent decisions. He's been known to read every word of every agenda item, and was always prepared. Wait, what? Did I just vote on this? And always prepared to ask pertinent questions while never being accused of grandstanding. So true. So now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento recognizes Bill Christoph for his enormous contributions to the City of West Sacramento and wishes Bill health and happiness in his retirement. So first, I want to applaud this. But we have, but that's just the beginning. We also have a commemorative baseball signed by all the council members. None of us are good at signing baseballs, so you'll have to we'll give you a printed copy of our names to remember. And then we have this plaque recognizing Mr. Christoph that is a reminder of his service, not just on the council, but his service leading the council as mayor and as mayor pro tem many times. To go with many, many service awards that Mr. Christoph has received from the city to recognize his tremendous service. I mean, I want to say this because I've served with Mr. Christoph now for 20 years of all these times, and I think most folks in the community know, everybody on the council knows, everybody on the staff knows, our natural inclination is to disagree about almost everything. I mean, if you line us up on issues in the world, we are not the same on almost everything. We approach everything with a different perspective, but we have learned to respect that in each other and to respect that we both care and believe and trust in the city and the residents and only care about the city and the residents in the future. And where I think I know I'm a better man because of it and a better city council member because of what I've learned from Mr. Christoph and how I've learned to disagree and to listen and to compromise and to grow and to change because of the leadership that he's provided and the style in which he has disagreed and led and compromised all along the way. And this has been one of the great honors of my career is to serve with someone of such class and distinction, focus and laser focus on fiscal responsibility, which I think is one of the crowning achievements of this city, is a great progressive, ambitious agenda while still being one of the most financially secure cities in the entire region. Despite our relative, underlying poverty and everything else, this is a very healthy city because Mr. Christoph has always stood up for the long term. He stood up for what's right. And so I know I speak for the whole council, but they'll speak for themselves in just wanting to, from within inside the city council, to say thank you for Bill and his your leadership and your heart and your dedication, your independence, your commitment to the city, to its people, and to its future. Thank you so much.
It's very humbling, and thank you for the kind words. This has been a labor of love. I was born and raised here, and I wanted to see if there was a way in which I could take this community to a different level. Al and I were born really close together. So anyway, you get up here now and you really don't have an awful lot to say other than I'm just very proud of all of the council members that I have served with in the past, and especially the ones in the future. And we've got some new council people getting ready to come on, and so I think that the community's going to be well served. We've had marvelous staff. I've been so blessed with the kind of staff people, whether they're police, fire, public works, parks, community development, whatever they may be. They've given me just very, very good, solid advice. And I try to take that advice and run with it. And Phil has been very good from a financial perspective. He and Lee Kiker, in the past, have really taught me a lot about city financing and financing. And I try to at least make a voice when we're doing budgets or we're doing other kinds of things that going to cost you, the citizens, your tax dollars. So I try to preserve those and do the best that I can. And I'm just so blessed to have served all of you for especially as long as I have. It never dawned on me when I started this venture that I'd be here this long. I figured they'd throw me out one of these days. But anyway, it's been a great ride. I absolutely loved what I did. And I've just met some of the most marvelous people that you can ever meet, especially when you're doing the job that I do. I try to get out, talk to people in the public, at the grocery store, the post office, wherever it may be. And I kind of get to know them a little bit. And I think that by the sheer fact you get to recognize some of those people. It makes for not only a healthy community, but it makes for a healthy me. It really helps me out. So I thank all of you. Thank you.
Are we coming down for a picture? Oh.
Yeah, just a couple words. I know we all went to Bill's very well-attended retirement party several weeks ago. But, you know, kind of for the thousands of people that watch these meetings every night or every Wednesday, and the folks that don't, you really can kind of see how a council should function, and I think we function as a team very well. And the mayor alluded to this, but really it's what is so valuable, what has been so valuable with Bill has been his perspective. And basically, when the city's grown, Bill's been here since the city was started. He's really the kind of the last person on council that has that history. And so over the course of 30 years, this city is developed from, you know, I wasn't even here back in the day in '87, but you know, how the city's just expanded. It's really transforming very fast. And without having any kind of historic perspective, it's very hard for a city to go through the transition and help folks that are in the middle of the transition. And you're seeing that in a lot of other well, you just saw in this last national election, you having these massive transitions going on, and you have the possible consequence of leaving people behind. And so Bill has always been, he's always been the voice for West Sacramento, where West Sacramento's been, and you can see in the dialogue that we all have on council on how forceful he's been. He's always been very respectful, and it's been very, very productive dialogue. And you can kind of see how policy is made with someone with Bill's perspective that really brings the whole city up and helps us through the transition. And the other perspective that I found very valuable with Bill is his conservative views. I mean, we're all similar politically, I think, but Bill is tight with city money, extremely tight with city money. And, you know, his priority has always been public safety, you know, health and welfare, which is our basic mandate. And, you know, his view has always been very, you know, it's not like I think we're a bunch of spenders up here, but we do spend, we have to spend, and there's always a question of priorities. And to have someone that say, well, whoa, wait a second, you know, you're trying to do this, but what about this whole area of town? What about the roads? What about this area of town that doesn't really have the police protection we need? What about the fire coverage and things like that? Bill has always been very solid in helping us, keep us grounded financially. And I think the mayor is absolutely right. As we've gone through this you know, financial turmoil several years back, it's perspectives from Bill that really kept us in the black. And so we're really going to miss that. But, you know, Bill is around still. He's not leaving town anytime soon. But it's been a real pleasure to work with you, Bill.
Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you, and I have to agree with everything that Councilmember Johannesson had said about how we're miss Bill and what he brought to this council. I've learned so much from Bill in the 6 years I've been serving on council. And I think the thing, and I said this at your reception, but it wasn't really echoed here for our thousands of viewers tonight, was just your legacy and the fiscal responsibility is something we all have learned from and will continue to hold that legacy here. But really it's your legacy for me, your legacy of service to the community. And it's not just the 30 years you spent sitting on the council dais and helping to pass or change ordinances or approve projects, or it's just not that, because I know you also have a family, and I know you've raised a terrific family, something that I've certainly looked up to, and see how you've been able to manage that. But he also cared for the community when there are changes made and the availability of monies that we would get out to nonprofits, and it was not there anymore. And you're one of the original, not just the original founder of our city, but one of the original founders of the West Sac Foundation, or the 444, and the tournament we held as a way to raise money and then give back to those organizations that the city couldn't support. It's something that serves as the model today. That group is still working hard to raise money, and I think it's something that they owe it to you and the community. Vast numbers of nonprofits and charitable organizations and community organizations that needed $500, $1,000 to buy jerseys for the kids for the soccer team, or to buy. I know Elderly Nutrition needed plates or trays for the Meals on Wheels. All that happened because 444 raised money, and that all happened because of the vision and the service you showed over this 30-plus year span. And this community is so indebted to that service. And it's not just sitting at a chair on the dais. You went beyond that, Bill, and for that, we're all grateful. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you these past years and really get to know you. So I was really lamenting tonight your last closed session with us. I'll miss your voice. I'll miss your voice on the council and these important issues we have. But somehow you've imprinted it in all of us that it'll come to mind. We'll think of what would Bill say at this moment. And it'll be there with us. So thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you. I want to remark on your kindness, and when I joined council and was appointed 2.5 years ago, just how I feel that you took me under your wing and you shared history with me that was really important. And I think all of us know about your passion for West Sacramento, and I think that I think your family and we and the community is really proud of all the work you've done for us. I think you are an example, and for me personally, of a servant leader. When you talk about meeting people in the community, you're really listening and caring about what they're sharing with you. And the other thing for me is when you talk about West Sacramento, you think about you grew up here, but you think about your grandkids, you think about the future, and you think about, you're really thoughtful about the legacy that you're leaving. And I think we all benefit. You've created West Sacramento, and I just want to thank, I'm grateful that I've had these 50 or so meetings with you, and I just look forward to continuing to hopefully tap you for your kind of knowledge and your background, because you've just made our city so proud. Thank you for your service.
I just want to add, Bill Khrushchev is a bunch of paradoxes, right? Bill's exactly what he seems, but also not really. He's the most spendthrift of, I think, anyone that's ever served on the city council. And yet, Bill is leading the most expensive, high-spending thing we've ever done, which is $1.5 billion investment in our levees. It's not that Bill doesn't want to spend any money, or hasn't been willing to, just he knows what matters. Right? So, and he's like, no, we need to be squirreling away money to make sure we don't flood and lose human life and property. I mean, this is a key priority. So, and the amount of time and effort and heartache and pain that has gone into the flood protection effort, which, except during, right after Hurricane Katrina, virtually no one in the city has cared that much about. It's not, I mean, don't tell this to DWR, but it's not on the minds of people every single day. So it's not the sort of thing you normally expect someone to spend, a politician to spend their time on. And Bill has done, even as I said earlier today, spends all of his time dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure that the most important thing that we could be doing is getting done, even if it isn't in the top of the headlines. And I've always respected his laser focus on that, just like his dad did with the water system before that. And because more than half of our residents don't have any clue what the city was like before Bill Khrushchev. You think, oh God, what was it like before the craft breweries? You mean back when the train was going by, you couldn't get from the north, the Broderick and Bright to other parts of the city and vice versa? Do you mean before there was a Rayleigh Field or a Sturz or a Ziggurat or a downtown or most of Southport or Nugget or an IKEA or levees that don't bubble up? There's no place in the community that has not been transformed since the city was formed, and that is not what you would expect from someone who acts as though all he cares about is fiscal conservatism. There's a deep passion for vision and for ambition and for getting stuff done, and spending the money to do it where it makes sense. And so even though Bill presents this face of who he really is, it masks this hunger to accomplish and to advance the community in really powerful and profound ways, and to embrace the change. Right? If you just watch our meetings on TV and you see Bill's constantly referencing the way we've always done it and the way it's been done, and yet Bill has been one of the like a couple of others, but very rare in the world, someone who has helped to create the conditions for other ideas, for other people, for new people to come to the table, for new parts of the community whose voices have never been heard, for new residents to say, I have a different idea, could we try this? And for someone to serve 30 years and still at year 29 be embracing and encouraging and supporting people with new ideas and different perspectives, and sometimes directly contrary perspectives, is a real testament to the confident, visionary, future-oriented leadership that the whole council has described. So the debts to Bill Khrushchev will never be repaid, but thank you again so much for your service to the community, for your colleagueship, and for what you have accomplished, which is extraordinary.
Thank you. There's been a couple issues that I've thought of here recently. When I started on the city council 30 years ago, we had just incorporated. The community had sort of a bad reputation, and it was not looked upon throughout the region as a place for success. We were looked down upon, so to speak, and I certainly wanted to see if there was a way in which we could make changes, so that didn't happen. And I can tell all of you today that the image of West Sacramento is a very high image. I am asked all the time by different jurisdictions throughout our region. How did you do that? How did you do this project? How did you fund this, whatever it was? And I take great pride in that. I think that that is something that, and it wasn't only me, it was the whole council and staff, and they're the ones that moved that engine along. And now we're sort of the envy of many communities that are out there. And I look at that as a badge of honor. I think that that is something that is really to be touted and really to be proud of. And the other thing is my wife, Brenda, and my family. They have done so much for me to allow me the time to go to council meetings, to read the agendas, to do all of the things that we do, go to the grand openings or ribbon cuttings or whatever it is. They have supplied that time for me to do my public service. And for that, I am ever grateful. I mean, it's like I said a couple weeks ago, it's like Brenda was a single parent raising our kids and this and that, and which she did just a marvelous job of. But we made it work, and for that I am so very, very thankful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christoph. I do have to go to the consent agenda next. Yeah, we're still getting a little more service out of Mr. Christoph. So we do have that now next to the consent agenda. And thanks, I know Carol and Helen and Ellen, probably others have come tonight just for this portion of the meeting. You're free to go, but thank you so much for your continuing support for Mr. Christoph. I know it means a lot to him and to us. Thanks. All right, so the consent agenda is items 3 through 18. Are there any items to remove or any items for separate consideration?
Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict with item 11, so if that could be,
Okay, so we'll
if
take
that could be
a separate
handled
vote on
separately.
item 11. I
Thank
think
you.
we're going to do the same thing on item, help me out, 8. Any others for separate question or comment or to remove? All right, so we have one request for public comment on item 7. So we'll take that first, and that's by Maria Grijalva.
Item 7 is the Economic Development and Housing and the $125,000 joint application for a grant, I believe. And I wanted to say that that is a really large amount of money, and it's going towards art. And even though, you know, West Sacramento is the pride and region, there's still a part of West Sacramento that remains neglected. And this $125,000 grant for art really could have just as well been as useful in the north part of West Sacramento. I know this application is specifically for art, but my point is that there's a lot of other grants that could be made for the north area. And it's important that we not forget that there's another part of West Sacramento in the north area that remains neglected. And so $125,000 would have been really nice for the north. Thank you.
All right, any other, that's the only comment we had on the item. This is obviously a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, and so therefore can only be spent on art. And it is for the Washington District, which unlike Michigan is part of Bright and Broderick. So this item is, we've heard it the basic construct before when we applied, but there's no further comments on the consent agenda minus items 8 and 11. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Ledesma. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Then item 8, which I'm going to recuse myself on, so I'll ask the Mayor Pro Tem to call the vote.
Any comment? Is there a motion?
I'll second.
Moved by, is that Mr. Johannesson? Seconded by Mr. Ledesma. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? You just recused yourself. Okay, thank you.
All right, and then item 11 is consideration and award of contract for the Bridgeway Lakes Boathouse Repair and Painting Project to Horizon Brothers Painting, and I believe Mayor Pro Tem Sandine is recusing herself from that item. So if there's a motion on that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma, and second by Mr. Johannesson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. With Mayor Pro Tem Sandine's abstention, that motion carries. The hour of 7:30 having arrived, we're going to proceed to our time-set agenda, which is item 19. Public hearing regarding resolutions 16-55, 16-63, and first reading of ordinance 16-7 concerning adoption of General Plan 2035, approval of zoning map revisions and certification of the General Plan 2035 EIR.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We are here now at the finish line for General Plan 2035. And so tonight we want to present a summary of the last changes that we have made based on your last council workshop and the last planning commission meeting, and then summarize the CEQA information and what we have before you. I have a short PowerPoint to help illustrate a couple of the points, and then we'll be seeking your approval tonight. So at our previous planning commission and city council meetings, we had our last workshop where we received the last and final comments from both the planning commission and city council. We have made a few final revisions to the general plan policy document along these lines. They're specifically related to equestrians and fishing in the parks and recreation element. These were both comments that came from the planning commission. And then from the council last workshop, we've made revisions to the mobility element to address the shared mobility and also then the neighborhood electric vehicles, which were both comments that we received at the last council meeting. And then with the passage of SB 32, we finally filled in one of the blanks that we had related to climate change in the general plan, which will then point us toward finishing our climate action plan. Also tonight, we prepared a zoning map for your consideration. This is related to ordinance 16-7. This is an implementation measure of the general plan, and this zoning map mirrors the general plan land use map that has been before your council several times previously. Also tonight, we have the final EIR and the requisite findings before you this evening. This is required by CEQA, and we'd be seeking your action on that tonight. This would be certification of the EIR, approval of the related findings. The document also includes the responses to all the public comments that we received on the EIR. Most notably, we received communication from SACOG that they have found our general plan to be consistent with the sustainable community strategy for the region. This does include the statement, also the statement of overriding considerations, as well as the mitigation monitoring plan, which are all in a package comprise the environmental review for the general plan. On November 1st, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on all the general plan and CEQA and related items. They voted unanimously to approve Resolution 16-4 PC, which was attached to your staff report tonight. This does include their unanimous recommendation to approve the general plan, certify the EIR, and then approve the zoning map changes as well. So lastly, for City Council tonight, we are seeking action on 2 resolutions and 1 ordinance this evening. Resolution 1655 would approve the CEQA findings and the EIR. We would ask that that be conducted first this evening. And then the second resolution would actually approve the general plan policy document and land use map. And then lastly, we would ask you to conduct first reading on ordinance 16-7, which would approve the related zoning map changes. And so with that, I'd like to close my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any other questions for staff at this time? All right, seeing none, we're going to open the public hearing. And we have 1 request to speak on this item. It's by Maria Grijalva. We're on item 19.
Regarding item 19, I wanted to ask what was being included in the general plan as far as West Capitol Avenue and crosswalks, and also to ask you to please consider modifying or amending or changing this general plan to include more services for the north, really. I'm just going to be like a broken record. I don't know enough about the parliamentary procedure at this point, where to interject and where not to interject. But again, the north needs services. The north, West Capitol Avenue needs crosswalks. We had 7 deaths, 10 of total people were hit. 7 of them died. And so the general plan needs to include the north. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So that's the only request we have on this item, so we'll close the public hearing and return it to the council for any further questions or discussion.
Yeah, I do have a question, and that is on equestrian access. As I read through the general plan policy documents, it looks like it was added, but on page 2-100, it says the city shall strive to accommodate equestrian users in open space and rural areas where feasible and compatible. Quite frankly, I thought after the last meeting there would be a bigger paragraph, or there would be something that talks about equestrian access and equestrian use with a little more vigor, I guess.
We would expect that the more formality of equestrian access would be more of an implementation measure, likely in the bike ped and trails master plan, where it actually gets into the specific trails, where they are, how wide they are, et cetera. We want to at least establish the foundation and general plan that we would indeed endeavor to accommodate equestrians, going forward. But that, so this was a policy that we added, did come up at the Planning Commission, and this is one we added in response to that comment.
I wonder if one way to sharpen this comment, this policy at least slightly more, because it's by striving to accommodate, we could end up with a patchwork, and we may end up having to end up with a patchwork. But with the bicycle and pedestrian system, we're at least conscious of we're trying to build a connected network, right? So having if we have equestrian access for this 2 blocks, and then there's no equestrian access, and then there's equestrian access again 4 blocks down. I mean, I don't have a horse, I don't know how it works, but I'm pretty sure I get it. You're going to end up creating other conflicts anyway. So I wonder if maybe one way to approach Mr. Christoph's question is just at least to emphasize that as a policy objective, that we are trying to create an equestrian network, or something more than just if it's not bothering anybody, we'll put it in. I think would help make it a little bit more affirmative in the way that Mr. Christoph's describing, and match up with how we would really hope that it would work for riders and for horses. Okay. Other questions or comments on that, or other topics?
Well, I would just say that, your staff, you've done an outstanding job of bringing forth a general plan, because quite frankly, a general plan it's a very, very important document. It's the Bible on how we are going to develop and how we are going to put policies in place that really help West Sacramentans. I urge everyone, I know it's a thick thing to read through, and trust me, you'll fall asleep. There's a lot of things that will happen when you start reading it. But at the same time, it's a very, very valuable document on how West Sacramento moves forward. So, but You guys have done a really good job. I can remember the questions and things we had on our first general plan, a lot different than it is now. You guys have sharpened your pencils and put your minds to work, and so for that, I'm very pleased. But thank you.
Mr. Johansson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think I may have mentioned last time when I first came on council, this document was 15 years old at that point, or the old document. Now it's, another 10 years and 20 years in the making. So this is really huge. And you can kind of see kind of the transition of the city in this document. When you look at the policies, it applies to the entire city. It's not just this part, Old West Sacramento, Southport, or whatever. This is an overarching policy on what, what the vision of the city is and what the treatment of the city should be. And there's a couple items here that are, probably new. They weren't in the old type of general plans. Mobility is a big one, and we talked about that a little bit earlier with the aging. And it's mobility not just for seniors, but it's of all ages, and with the bike and pedestrian paths, access to safe streets and all that, that's incorporated, and that's kind of ingrained now in what we want to do in the city. And also looking at some future-ready type transportations like autonomous vehicles and things that may be coming down the pike that weren't even contemplated when this document was, the old document was instituted. Another element that's in here that wasn't really in the past is this healthy community element. So now we're focused on, the farm to fork, some of the urban farming, allowing, having ways for folks to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables and that type of thing. And just it kind of blends into the mobility issue. So you have people active walking to places where they can go, not necessarily taking a car everywhere. And also in this document is the preservation, the historical preservation of the city as well. So there's a lot of attention paid to, to make sure that the city's neighborhoods are preserved, Bright and Broderick are preserved, and the characters of the individual components of the cities are preserved, so we just don't turn into one big suburban mess. And so this type of document, the way it's drafted, I'm very satisfied. And again, thank you, staff, and for getting this together. I know it's a lot of work, and we had kind of fits and starts on it, in whether we're going to get a consultant or not, and whether there's money to do this or not. But really, I think staff really picked up the slack there and really put together a great document. I think you heard what at least I think what I hear us saying up here is incorporated in this document. It's a very good job. And I think, as was mentioned, I think folks that, I think it's not an easy read, but there's an index, and there's an executive summary. So if folks even want to just grab this document online and when it's published, and take a look at the executive summary, just kind of get a flavor of it, maybe go through the index and kind of go through some of the sections. You can see the extent of work that went into this and the thought that went into this, and I'm very proud of it, and thank staff for really putting this together.
All right, next are two former planning commissioners who were here at the beginning of this process as well.
Yeah, we
so
were.
Mr. Ledesma?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to staff for bringing this document to us, and I couldn't be prouder of it and the process we went through. It took some time to kind of get this updated, but it's hard to, it seems so removed from the economic, the recession we had, and how the city really had to curb back, and we held this off, and where was the funding coming from, and the part that you're most proud of, you kind of keep that context in mind, how we were still able to evolve, how we're still able to incorporate and dream big, and it's encapsulated in the objectives we have here. And it's not about dream big, it's about how we want to be as a community, how we're going to grow from the types of growth throughout the city, the types of amenities we want for our residents, from having discussions which we had back in the planning commission days about equestrian trails, and it's all encapsulated because the process you had, you listened to the community, you listened to planning commission members, you listened to residents, and you listened to us as we kind of brought our priorities forward. I'm just proud of the fact that we were able to get this completed and encapsulate some things that are very forward-looking. I'm very proud of the fact that some of the things that Mr. Johannesson brought up, how we've incorporated that, and how we've incorporated things like we put in, I think that one of our feedback sessions was around 21st century policing, which has been such a big, to me, a big leap, this step forward this organization, this city has taken about how our city and our residents will work together and how we'll do that. And it's encapsulated here. And it's important that it is, because I know in the pressures, I've witnessed it firsthand, the pressures of just running the day-to-day life, or this, we just got done with an election season. This encapsulates who we want to be, and there's pressure to change that, or to be this, or to be certain things specific to one certain group. And that's not what this is about. This is about the shared values and the aspirations of a community. And there are people who say we don't need that, or it needs to be something really specific. And no, this is about the community. And I think that is why it's an important document that lays the groundwork for many other things we'll do going forward. But at its core, it does capture our aspirations, our objectives, where we want to go and how we want to get there. So I applaud the staff and urge us to kind of keep using it. It's a living, breathing document that we'll have to update again at some point. But for the time being, it really is forward-looking, that we can really, it'll be useful for some time. So thank you, staff.
Mayor Pro Tem Timothy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, would like to add my commendation to the staff team, as well as all the community members who over the years have provided input, and the commissioners, and of course the council. I, too, agree this is, it's ready. I think we should move it forward tonight. We've had lots of input, and I think it's important to wrap it up and move forward. It does provide us the guideposts for the future. And as I mentioned, when we had the draft EIR come to us, when you take the case of no change and no modifications, and you look at that as compared to what is in what we're proposing and what we're looking toward, we're in a much better position for the future. And so again, I want to applaud the team that's worked on this for many years, and thank you.
I certainly concur. I mean, if you took this general plan and you put it right next to our old general plan, or to most other places' general plans, it's a very progressive, very audacious general plan in many ways. Some of which Mr. Johannesson mentioned, but there's hundreds more elements in here that are at the leading edge of what smart, good, caring places and communities do. But I'm also struck that there's like also very little that's new to me in here. I mean, this is not like our original general plan is like, okay, we're just getting started. What should we do now? What should we do now? And this is in some sense, it's a derivative general plan. It's like, okay, what are we already doing? What initiatives were there launched? How have we already, gotten it to the front of the line on how you do planning work and community development? And let's just write it down. So it's like we've set a new baseline with this general plan, but I don't feel like this is not an aspirational general plan in the sense that it simply distills the energy and the vision and the sense of collective action and possibility that has already animated our work. It's just the general plan sort of catching up with these couple decades of progress in some significant ways. So I'm super bullish on it. I think and also this was not done with anywhere near the resources of the old general plan. The poor community development staff just trying to find a penny here and a penny there to do a general plan and cover a lot of areas that we wanted to cover, for which we had no funding to do the staff work or the resources. And so really kudos to the department and to the other staff in other departments that have certainly contributed a great deal to this. I know the Planning Commission is amazingly proud of this work, because they've done the planning commissions have done a lot of work around this, and really dived into every word and every detail, and made some tough choices along the way. So really appreciate their work and their leadership on this. But this is definitely a general plan that a community can be proud of, but it's also a general plan that is an actual working document of how we do business and what we're driving towards in the city. It is a Bible. I mean, we do use this as I mean, we don't go out and implement this tomorrow, so so the conversation we were having earlier, we have virtually no discretionary money to do anything. We can't order people to build things or to make things or to open a Trader Joe's. We have very little direct power to make the kinds of things happen in the community that we and all the community members want to see. Our ability is just to turn a knob here, create a little incentive over there, make it a little easier to get through a process over here. That's how we make change happen in the community. But these are the policies and the objectives that help to drive that and help our staff and our partners and folks who want to invest in our community see where it's going and see how they can join the effort to try to keep making West Sacramento even better. So thanks again to everyone that's been involved in this. And so with that, I'd like to ask if there is a motion on the item. Mayor Pro Tem
Are we
Sidwell?
moving these separately? It sounded like, sorry, for Mr.
Yeah, yeah.
Tilley.
They could be moved together. Regarding the equestrian policy,
Oh, yes,
did we
sorry.
want to, we had suggested language we could add to that policy, if that would be your pleasure.
Let's hear it.
We would insert the phrase "an equestrian network" into that policy, so that we do show that we're trying to not just have a horse here, a horse over there, but on a connected basis.
Okay.
Yeah, if
I'll
that
move
was-
recommended actions.
With that.
Yes, with that
Okay.
addition.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Congratulations. We're going to return to item 17. I neglected that we did have ultimately 2 requests for public comment on item 17. So we're going to return to that, which in item 17 is consideration of adoption of funding targets for Measure E and the framework for the Kids Home Run. And so we have 2 requests, first by Maria Grijalva and then by Angela Grijalva.
The comment I wanted to make regarding Measure E is that since it has passed, it would be very beneficial to the kids of the North if we had a PAL program or any other program that would keep our kids off the street and keep them busy. I'm not exactly sure what the Kids Home Run program is, but I do know that we need a PAL program, we need a Parks and Rec Center for the North area, and so I would wish for you to consider that now that Measure E has passed. Thank you very much.
All right, and Angela Grijalva?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My question about Measure E is along the same lines. On the Facebook Yes on Measure E post, there's a diagram indicating that funds will be allocated to fixing roads and to reduce homelessness. And so I wanted to ask if you can answer what kind of programs specifically are going to be targeted towards reducing homelessness. Is affordable housing one? I heard a gentleman earlier today talk about affordable housing. And if I may suggest that when it comes to affordable housing, not just have buildings dedicated to all affordable housing, but mixed units, because those are much more sustainable. We have things like that in Atomas. As far as the roads, I wanted to ask, now that funding's available, are Franklin and Sutter considered in those repairs, in those road repairs that are proposed here? Okay, thank you so much. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
All right, so the item the item that's available both here and on the internet has the spending framework. The specific, I should know, the specifics of each of the spending programs will come forward during the normal budget process and the council's strategic planning process over the next several months. And they will be dynamic because I know one of the council's core principles of Measure E for most of the elements of it was that these were dollars to leverage other sources of funding, that other than roads, most of the other elements in here can only be accomplished with significantly more money than is in Measure E. So the Measure E provides the foundation by which we can apply for more grants or draw other funds that will allow us to do those things. And so the spending plan will be driven by those opportunities in addition to our own budgets. But that will be coming forward over the next several months. with the first Measure E disbursement will be made to the city in April of 2017, so we don't yet have any Measure E funds to expend, but this item tonight will allow us, the staff, to begin moving forward with issue papers and budget items for consideration by the council between now and next summer. All right, so we'll go now to item 20, which is consideration and adoption of urgency ordinance making 16-9, making findings and establishing a temporary moratorium on the outdoor cultivation and sale of non-medical marijuana within the city. Ms. Hamilton.
Good evening, Mayor Baldwin and members of the council. With the passage of Proposition 64 last week during the general election, several non-medical marijuana uses are now legal in the state of California. Although most of those uses require a state license, for which that program has not been implemented yet, so those do not pose an imminent risk at this time. But there are two uses that we have particular concern over, and that is the personal use and cultivation of non-medical marijuana, as well as the potential sale. This differentiates from the dispensary sales that would require a state license. We're more looking at the potential for a gray market sales situation. Plus, it's also to bring about clarification, since our current regulations speak to medical marijuana, and we have regulations related to outdoor cultivation, the prohibition of that, allowing indoor cultivation for medical marijuana, as well as prohibition of medical marijuana dispensaries. So we wanted to also be very transparent and clear and keep those consistent for the time being. So tonight, what we have before you is an urgency ordinance to enact a moratorium which would prohibit the outdoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana, as well as sales of non-medical marijuana. To enact this ordinance, it requires a 4/5 vote. It is for a 45-day moratorium. During this time, staff will be evaluating best practices throughout the state, as well as other states who have legalized non-medical marijuana. Also looking at unanticipated outcomes and looking at what will best suit our city in bringing back options for regulation, prohibition, et cetera, for these two immediate uses. We will continue to work on the other uses that are going to be under the state licensing program, and that will come a little later in 2017, but definitely in time for the licensing. So therefore, the agenda report did include an update to some statistics that weren't available at the time the agenda report was released. You have a memorandum from the city manager that contains that information. The slide above, I apologize, it's a little bit small, but I wanted to keep it in one slide. It contains the same information. So we do now have the 2014, 15, and 16 information from the county's computer-aided dispatch system, as well as from YONET. There was a change in 2013 with the county's provider to the dispatch system, and so we are not able to differentiate cultivation cases from the marijuana-related cases that come in under the narcotics calls. So that's why that has changed from prior years. Overall, the stats from the county's dispatch system is showing a decrease in marijuana-related cases. That could be because of changes at state law back in 2014 with Proposition 47. It also could be from our prohibition on outdoor cultivation. So there could be some factors there, as well as an overall decrease in the crime stats in general in our city. But code enforcement cases remain steady, and the YONET cases in the last couple of years have actually shown an increase. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and again, the urgency ordinance requires a 4/5 vote tonight, and there are findings related to the public health, welfare, and safety in order to enact the moratorium. Thank you.
All right. We don't often get a direct presentation by the Director of Community Development, and this one's all crime stats. I don't. All right, so are there questions or comments on this item? Mr. Johansson?
Comments? I don't know, there's really no questions for you, Charlene, but, yeah, so thank you for including the report on the Colorado's experience in this, and just going through that, there's so many questions here, and I think you mentioned the gray market potential here. One of the problems that was mentioned in this report was that is creating an inventory, and that sometimes the inventories didn't really match of what the folks said they had. So there's this leakage of product going out that potentially is being sold under the table or not really going through legitimate channels, which is going to be a challenge when you're trying to tax it. You basically have an above-the-board market and behind-the-scenes market. And the other was just the effect on DUIs and the ability of law enforcement to detect if someone's, an inexpensive way to detect if someone's under the influence of this. Apparently the test is, a blood test is $300 versus a alcohol test, which is, in the 20s or something along that line. So I think it's really, really prudent at this point to kind of step back a bit for a quick, moratorium on this to kind of get our ducks in a row when this goes into effect, because there are a lot of legitimate concerns, and the voters have spoken on this issue, but our job here is health and safety of our community members, and I think this is a prudent way to handle that.
Yes, Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, no, I concur. I mean, I think that I liked what you had to say in here as far as inform the audience that a public hearing regarding the extension of a moratorium is tentatively scheduled for December 14th. So it could go past the 45 days, I think. That's how I read that.
Yes, we wanted to get that out there. It's pretty much impossible for us to have an ordinance imposing new regulations to address these two uses before the 45 days is up.
I think you're right.
And so we're likely to come back with an extension, but we really do hope to be back before you on December 14th with some analysis of the various options.
It will be for them.
You're welcome to join us.
Yes.
This isn't my favorite subject, so, yeah. So anyway, but I was glad to see that in your recommendation.
Thank you. Just wanted to echo that. I do support the urgency ordinance that you're proposing. It just makes sense, and from our lessons on the other, the medical marijuana, it's just we need some time just to catch up with where everybody else is or where we need to be. So I'm supportive of this, and I just want to make sure we are taking prudent steps and making sure the voters have spoken, and that's I think we're being respectful of that. The respectful part for us is just to make sure we have the right ordinances in place. We have thought about it from everybody's point of view, what's best for West Sacramento, so we can implement it in a way that is prudent for everyone. So appreciate your thoughtfulness in this. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandin.
Yeah, this allows us time to have thoughtful consideration of options, so sounds like the rest of my colleagues in agreement.
Yeah, I don't see any other option here anyway. I mean, our own voters have spoken too. I mean, the Proposition 64 passed by a large margin in West Sacramento. Not the same as Davis, but close. So there is pretty widespread support for this policy in the city, with the sole exception of the Bright neighborhood. But really everywhere else from Broderick through Southport voted by a significant margin for it. And so although I think we need to it is categorically different from what we've been dealing with on the medical side. If there are any of the advocates that are watching, I think it's almost unforeseeable that we would not, of course, based on the evidence and the testimony in the staff report. But it seems unlikely that we would not move forward in a longer moratorium at that December meeting. So, folks are thinking, let's organize 1 million people to come. We're not going to have, for the reasons that you've said, we simply cannot put together even a baseline framework in that amount of time and have the community have the chance to review and digest what that really is all about and what the implications are from both the, folks in the community who want to get access to recreational use of marijuana and are waiting for that to happen, and for folks in the community who are concerned about it, and the balance that we've got to achieve from a public safety perspective, my colleagues have said. So obviously we need to get to a place where we are advancing the interests of the voters as they've expressed them, but we need to get at least basically right the foundation of it. We can continue to iterate and tweak it after that, but we do, and that's going to take more than tonight or 45 days from tonight, so I'm supportive of this as well. All right, so if there's no further comments or discussion on this one, is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Christoph. This does require 4/5 vote, so Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Christoph?
Yes.
Councilmember Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Sandin?
Yes.
And Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion carries 5-0. That brings us to item 21, which is consideration of first reading of ordinance 16-8, amending chapter 8.36 of the municipal code concerning camping on public and private property. Lieutenant Strange, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for your consideration on this item and the recommendations contained therein on the agenda. Just like to say first and foremost that we're still absolutely committed to the strategy of how we take on the issue of homelessness in the community. We're committed to doing that and delivering services with professionalism and in a humane manner that still preserves the dignity of all. But we have to do this while also balancing the public safety aspects of issues. And in this case of homelessness, the rights of those to use our public space as it's intended. So in countering this and in doing some of our outreach and enforcement, we have encountered an issue with the current ordinance, which we still enforce, but runs into a hurdle when it gets to the prosecuting authority over at the DA's office, where they're unable to move forward in most of our cases due to the language construction of our current ordinance. So the proposed ordinance language, though seemingly insignificant changes, are significant with the impact that it enables. So in asking for that, it's to overcome the challenges that currently exist that allow the DA's office to actually file the charges that we bring forward on these cases. It's really important to note, though, we're not necessarily doing this because we want to see major criminal sanctions for this offense, but it enables the DA's office to then enter folks into programs like the restorative justice programs, neighborhood court, homelessness court, which really provide another opportunity to link some of these folks to services. What we do find frequently, if we're going to actually take an enforcement action to cite or arrest somebody based on the camping ordinance, that's done so after many, many encounters with folks in violation of our ordinance. It's not done on a first glance. So this is something that is just another opportunity for us to intervene in their episode of homelessness and then to engage our partners at the DA's office with another avenue to link services to these folks. So again, the normal application of this ordinance will be after several attempts, as has been our case thus far. And it just gives us that enforcement tool for these folks that chronically refuse our offers of services out here in the field. And again, this still is within lines of our services first approach. And even though it does enable that ability to make an enforcement action or an arrest, we're not abandoning that services first approach. This just better enables us to take that next step when we need to. So with that, I would just respectfully submit and ask that you consider our recommendation.
All right, other questions this time? Mayor Pro Tem Sandin.
I'm curious about if you know or can inform us about ordinances kind of surrounding our jurisdiction, or are they, would this make us more similar to other jurisdictions? I just had that curiosity just to understand, because I think sometimes boundaries aren't, we have to care about the city, but we have folks from other jurisdictions visiting or staying here, passing through. I just don't know if you have that background, if this makes us more similar than adjacent jurisdictions or less similar.
I can speak within the confines of Yolo County. A lot of what we did in consulting with our own city legal counsel and with the district attorney's office is we used some of the experience of what the city of Woodland had gone through in reconstructing their ordinance in the last couple of years. Because they encountered a very, very similar situation wherein the camping ordinance language, similar to our current language, really required us, as far as to have a case that the DA's office could actually move forward on. We have to prove that there was actually sleeping occurring over the course of a night or nights, which meant there would have to be some monitoring of that specific camping situation to enable that, which is just not practical, and with a reasonable change in the ordinance is not required.
Thank you.
So just to drill into some of the definitions, because these are the key. So the camping, I was trying to understand, since we don't, I'm guessing our regular R1, R2, R3 zoning doesn't allow camping. Would I be wrong? So here's a question. So my kids are going to pop a tent in the backyard. Then under the new language, is that a unlawful violation of this ordinance?
It is absolutely not intended to be.
I know that, but
If your question is, could you camp on your own property? Yes, you could.
okay, because it says your own property, if all the following conditions are met, including such uses allowed under the city zoning ordinance.
I don't believe that would be treated as a primary use of property, so I think we would call that an incidental or an accessory use. If you turned out to be camping all year round, we might have a different issue, but the occasional use of your property for that would be okay.
Okay. And then on storage, so store means to put aside or accumulate for use when needed, to put for safekeeping, to place or leave in a location. So if I park my bike at a bike rack on public property owned by the city or the port or the state, I'm storing it there to be kept safe while I go to the library or come to this meeting, have I violated this ordinance?
No. No, I mean, it's easy for me to say from an enforcement standpoint, but what it is intended to address is those situations in public space where the space is not being used for its intended purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So the bike rack would be intended to be used for the bike to be stored there for the length of time it needs to be for whatever business is being conducted. So in that scenario, no, I don't believe there would be an issue.
Okay, I'm asking, Mr. Johannesson is our resident attorney, but because we have this item before us, because essentially the courts have said or signaled that you can't be targeting homeless activity, so you have to be clear about what it is that is allowed in all circumstances, whether or not somebody is homeless. I'm interpreting that to mean that these definitions actually are important, and they can't be. That we're not going to have unfettered discretion to interpret them in the field. That's the only reason I'm drilling down on these, more so than I would normally, for things that make good common sense, or that we would trust our officers and the judicial system to just interpret it, based on what it says. So that's the reason I'm asking. So this is just on for.
I think I agree, but I would also say, as Lieutenant mentioned, this was done in coordination with Cleveland County DA. So they had quite a input into the specific language, and they made a number of language changes in it. So I think between all of us, we've probably covered that sufficiently.
All right, well, you get one more chance because we're coming back for a second reading. So.
True, but if we make a substantive change, then it comes back again. So.
But if you look at it and determine no change is needed, then we will come back and we won't have to make one. If you look at it, if you take one more look at it, and you're like, okay, actually, it might be worth changing. It's worth having to put it off for one more meeting to accomplish. So, Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, I think just on this exception, I think there's a typo there. Quickly, it's I think it was a section that the mayor was reading. I think it should be if all of the following conditions are met, not of all the following conditions are met.
Mm-hmm.
At the end there. But yeah, I agree that, you know, the services first approach, I think, is a really, really good idea here because, you know, we've seen in the homeless population, and we've had the chief get up here and say, we can't arrest our way out of this thing. And even though these things are misdemeanors, you have to have some type of hammer there to address this issue, but to get the folks in services and kind of like we were doing with Bridge to Housing, you know, get them in services, get some treatment going on, I think is the way to go because you're right, some folks, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen no matter how many times you ask because there's some impediment there and it's either self-induced or, you know, a clinical issue. So I think it's a really good approach to how you handle this.
Yeah, this is, with the passage of Measure E, we'll have, you know, some resources in smart ways with the right leverage opportunities to address some of these issues. So, to the extent to which we ban storage, it may be that one of the things that we pursue through Measure E is, you know, storage lockers or some sort of storage alternative, or you know, other things that would mitigate some of these impacts. Because for exactly the reasons that you said, and it's in the ordinance in terms of around just basic human dignity and about the basic necessities that are in place. While, as you said, at the same time, you know, I live a couple blocks from the Riverwalk, and so I often see, you know, women, but not just women, and children, and not just children, who are walking along, and, you know, folks jump out and scream, "Look, I'm going to cut you!" And nobody gets injured, but that environment has destroyed the public realm for residents. So there's a human cost on all sides of this equation, so we can just show our values and our humanity while at the same time doing that in a way that's protecting public health and public safety. And the revisions to this ordinance, combined with the passage of Measure, I think, allow us to do that. So this is an important step. Agreed. All right, any other questions or comments on this? We have is there a motion on the first reading option? It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Sandin and seconded by Mr. Johannesson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 22 is workshop for consideration of smoke-free city facilities and parks and recreation areas. Ms. Berlin? Or Ms. Tuttle, or all of the above?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. The purpose of this workshop is to discuss potential amendments to Chapter 8.16 of the Municipal Code to look at prohibiting smoking at and around city facilities and parks and recreation areas, except in designated smoking areas. Studies have shown that the exposure to secondhand smoke is unhealthy. Tobacco smoke contains over 7,000 chemicals and compounds, and the Surgeon General has concluded there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke. Even outdoors, a person would need to move nearly 23 feet away from the source to be completely free from exposure to secondhand smoke. Currently, under state law, smoking is prohibited inside city public buildings, but in outdoor areas of a public building, smoking is only prohibited within 20 feet of a main exit, entrance, or operable window. State law also regulates smoking and littering of tobacco-related waste in parks, but only within 25 feet of a playground. So parks and recreation areas, areas of parks and recreation areas outside of this 25-foot radius or without any playgrounds are not subject to regulation or enforcement. So currently, the state laws don't really fully protect families, children, and others who visit city facilities and city parks and recreation areas from secondhand smoke. And local governments are granted the authority to enforce their own smoking restrictions so long as their covering area is not covered by state law. So the city has an existing smoking ordinance in Chapter 8.16. Most of the ordinance is currently preempted by state law, expressly preempted through Section 8.16.005 under Labor Code 6404.5, which relates to smoking in workplaces. But our ordinance doesn't really regulate smoking in outdoor areas, except for prohibiting smoking at the port and smoking near transportation stops. So in order to more fully protect families and children and others who visit city facilities and parks and recreation areas from secondhand smoke, staff is proposing to amend Chapter 8.16 to prohibit smoking in those locations except in designated smoking areas. The prohibition on smoking at these facilities would include the facility and the public property on which it's located and extend to and include parking lots and the adjacent public sidewalk. In addition, staff is recommending adding a provision that prohibits disposal of smoking-related waste in such areas except in designated waste disposal containers. Staff believes that regulation of smoking and disposal of smoking-related waste in these areas is something that has been identified as a need by staff and would be well received by the public. Specifically at the community center, the library, the transit district, the Los Rios Community College or the Sac City College, they already have policies in place which ban smoking on their facilities. The community center, however, is just subject to state law and the 20-foot distance requirement from doors. So that kind of leaves a loophole, open area for people to go smoke there. The Common Area Maintenance Group, which is made up of representatives from all those agencies, they recently met and determined that it would be a huge help if smoking could also be banned at the community center to kind of complete the smoking ban at that campus. As far as parks and recreation areas, there has been complaints to the police department and on social media regarding patrons at Joey Lopes Parks. Joey Lopes Park being bothered by people smoking. Parents have also complained about the exposure of their children from people smoking on the Sycamore Trail, which is a safe route to school. In 2012, there was a random survey of West Sacramento residents that found that 86% of the participants would support a law for smoke-free parks. So staff believes that this would be a policy that would be well received by the public. The cities of Woodland, Winters, and Davis already have adopted ordinances that regulate in some way smoking in public areas, including around parks and public facilities. So if the council directs staff to move forward with this item, we would draft proposed amendments to Chapter 8.16 and take it back through the Parks and Recreation and Intergenerational Commission for their review and recommendation before bringing it back to council. The staff report has some proposed language for an amendment, including specifically about the city facilities and parks and recreation areas, banning smoking there, except in designated areas, and also creating a new definition of smoke and smoking. That definition would address a prior item that we looked at last year relating to regulation of e-cigarettes. Back in November of last year, we were directed to look into regulating e-cigarettes as we regulate smoking in the city. In the process of creating those, drafting those amendments, state law was working its way through the legislature and eventually was passed. And so now cigarettes at the state level, or e-cigarettes at the state level, are regulated as tobacco is regulated. So in addition to coming back with new amendments to 8.16 to address smoking at city facilities and parks and recreation areas, we would add language to address e-cigarettes and also to address smoking of marijuana after Proposition 64. And if you direct us not to go forward with the prohibition of smoking in parks and city facilities, we would still bring back the amendments to address the e-cigarettes piece and the marijuana piece and make some minor adjustments to Chapter 8.16 to address some inconsistencies in the code.
All right, it's a workshop only, but are there questions or comments? Mr. Johannesson?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. What is the rationale for the penalties being different for, if you smoke on the port property, it's a misdemeanor. If you smoke on any other property, it's an infraction. What is the reason for that distinction?
You know, I think, I don't know for sure. The issue with the current version of the smoking ordinance is that so many of the sections are preempted that it's hard to tell what actually is applicable at this point. But if,
I think I would just make sure, if you haven't run it by the DA, just to kind of see where, because they're going to be the ones that are going to have to deal with any cases that come down the pike, if it should be an infraction or deal with it as an infraction versus a misdemeanor.
yeah, we'll make sure there's consistency throughout
Okay.
where we make additional amendments.
Mr. Kristoff?
One quick question, Amanda, and that was on the port facilities. There's a lot of people that go down the port and fish. If they're on land, it'd be pretty hard to say, no, you can't smoke. So I'm wondering, are we creating something that's going to be an issue that somehow or another we need to legislate through and look into the future about that?
Yeah, I think it would be just a matter of, there would be signage there, and it would be a matter of whether that's something that we wanted to enforce, or we could create an area where smoking would be allowed in a particular section. There's questions that we can definitely look at to make sure that we're making those facilities available to people who.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of silly to have somebody light up a cigarette that's way down the deep water channel fishing or something, and that's port property. And yet to have them receive some kind of a citation or something, we need to take a look at that.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You answered one of my questions, which was the adjacent jurisdictions. So it sounds like Woodland, Winters, and Davis all have this kind of ordinance in place.
Yeah,
already.
in varying
A
forms.
prohibition, okay. My other comment had to do with the budget and cost impact. It looks like it would be minimal related to signage and outreach. I feel like there's also potential opportunity for savings, which relates to, as you mentioned, the cleanup. So I think there's also probably some kinds of offsetting where we might be spending funds right now with kind of cigarette waste and other waste that may now disappear. So it seems to me that it's possible that there may be a budget offset. And I know we don't typically kind of price public health savings, but I think there would be substantial public health savings as well.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Ledesma?
I missed my turn, sorry. Thank you, Amanda, for the presentation. In general, I'm very supportive of this, and there's been a couple of clarifying questions that I don't know folks have asked, which are important as we kind of move this forward. First of all, I'm glad, one of my questions was around what was the impetus for this? What brought this forward? And you kind of answered that in that there's some gaps identified, not just here at this facility, others, of how smoking's allowed in certain areas. And I'm glad the other agencies have come forward and said, hey, can we close the loop? So that answered one of my questions around kind of what was the impetus for this, and did we self-identify this or others, and were others consulted? So thank you for that. I'm just trying to think of an area we define the city facilities, parks, and recreation areas. And they include, but not limited to, we have a list of areas of how they could be affected, but I'm also thinking of areas like, something like the barn, which is a public-private, it's still a public space, but is it a city facility? I don't know if it's included in that. And other areas of public, because the state, and looking at the state law preemption, it defines public space very broadly to include, just anywhere people gather. So I just want to make sure it's kind of maybe thinking ahead about spaces that aren't here yet, how they might be impacted. There's public-private partnerships involved. That will be important, I think, to define or at least anticipate, because we don't want to have well, I get the health effects of smoking. I don't want somebody to find it, we get into a quandary where somebody says, well, this doesn't apply to us, if it's some sort of facility or not. So again, just something that I wanted to bring to your attention, that I think that something can be clarified, but certainly supportive of the direction that we're going here to make sure we clarify what we want on our public facilities. So thank you.
All right, this is a workshop only, so I think you've got sufficient direction for continued work on this. So thank you. With that, we'll move to item 23, which is consideration of Resolution 16-58, proposing to establish an enhanced infrastructure financing district number 1 to finance the construction and/or acquisition of capital improvements in the city of West Sacramento, fixing the time and place for a public hearing on the proposed infrastructure financing plan, and authorizing certain other actions related thereto. Mr. Blumberg.
Mayor, members of the council, on October 19th, you held a workshop on the formation of a proposed EIFD within the city and provided staff with policy direction related to the formation of the district. Tonight's actions will initiate the formation process and key actions that are required under EIFD law. So if you look at your resolution 1658, it really initiates the formation process with a series of steps that we believe will lead up to a resolution of formation for the district that we expect to be approved in April of 2017. One of the actions that's kind of new in terms of our financing districts is that you're going to establish a public financing authority of 5 members that will act as a governing body of the EIFD. And so you would have 3 city council members and 2 members of the public. Now, PFA is going to play a lead role in the formation process, whereas typically just the city council plays that role. And so the PFA is going to direct staff to prepare what we would call the infrastructure financing plan, and they're also going to approve the financing plan and adopt the ordinance. The initial term for the PFA would be 1-year terms. You are also, in approving the resolution, being asked to establish the boundaries of the proposed district. As we went over at the workshop last month, there are 14 sub-areas that total approximately 4,127 acres. It's about 76% of the former redevelopment area, and it currently has an assessed valuation of $2.3 billion. The next action is that you are, if you look at Exhibit A to your resolution, you're approving a set of authorized facilities to be financed by the EIFD. The list is very general. It's taken right out of EIFD law. And it has a broad range of public facilities, the kind we typically think of when we think of these public districts. Roadways, freeway, ramps, sewer improvements, flood improvements, but also includes things like the reuse of industrial facilities or projects that implement a sustainable communities plan or brownfield remediation or affordable housing. So there are some kind of new types of uses on that list. And then finally, as part of the resolution, you're going to set a date for the public hearing on adoption of the IFD plan, which we are requesting be April 19th, 2017. In your resolution, it has an old date of March 15th, but we want to add a month to that schedule. After approving tonight's resolution, should you approve the action, we would do a number of steps. We would mail the resolution to property owners within the proposed boundaries of the district. And this will be literally thousands of property owners. So we'll likely put some information on the city's website that would then direct people to the website if they have questions, so I don't have to take all the calls. And then we're gonna convene the PFA and request that the PFA direct city staff to prepare the IFD plan. And we anticipate that first meeting will be in January. And then there's the preparation of the IFD plan, which again, this document's similar to what was prepared for the Bridge District Infrastructure Financing District in 2014. It talks about the tax increment we believe that will be generated. It establishes a cap on the amount of TI that can be collected. It includes a cap on the bonding authority under the district. And most importantly, address potential fiscal impacts to the city of committing property tax to the EIFD. And we believe by early March, we would be in a position to send the EIFD plan to each property owner within the district as required by law. And on April 19th, we would have the hearing where the PFA would hold the public hearing on the plan, and the PFA would adopt a resolution of formation. I should point out that we do want to fit in another workshop with the City Council, likely in February, to go over the infrastructure financing plan before we put it in final, so that we can get your feedback and comments on that. So that completes staff recommendation. If you have staff's overview, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Paul, you're going to let them know this is the first one in the state?
No, don't tell us.
Right now, there's an infrastructure revitalization district that's being proposed for Treasure Island in San Francisco, but right now we believe that we would be the first EIFD formed within the state if we stay on the schedule that we're on.
Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for the update and the overview. A couple of questions. So I know we're basically initiating the actions, the steps tonight. And the one all very good stuff we've talked about for a few years now, how we go about this. So I'm glad to see it coming forward. The part that I'm just a little bit attuned to is just, and this is where I'm going to leverage Councilmember Christoph because he has a history in this. And redevelopment was a little easier to explain to people because I think as we incorporated around the same time, we probably established a redevelopment agency district, and the city wasn't as large as it is today, and people were just existing in a redevelopment district, and they probably didn't even know it. And the Bridge District, for instance, and some of the other areas that we leveraged tax increment, there were, 6 property owners that we worked with, including the city, and they all got it. So I'm just want to make sure we're conscious of the fact that while some of us have been working in this area for a long time, and we just go out to tell people you're now in this new EIFD, and there could be confusion about what that means. So just to make sure we take really good care of the fact of communicating what it means and what it could be. So not just while we have thousands and thousands of viewers who I'm sure have stayed tuned every episode about implementation of EIFD. I'm sure there are a few that would see a notice about they're now in this district and what it might mean. And it's just a matter of making sure we take care to not just depend on a one-page letter saying you're now here, but also we think about that a little bit, be thoughtful with residents who don't understand the redevelopment went away and now they're in this district, because it could be perceived differently. That's my only comment, but I'm excited to see this kind of where it is today and be initiating it, so thank you.
questions or comments? All right, so if we take the two recommended actions up separately, so make appointments to the authority once we've voted to create the authority. I mean, it's obviously in the same meeting, but so if there's a motion on the first recommended action, which is the adoption of the resolution.
I'll move adoption of resolution is it 16-58? Sorry, I need my glasses.
You're close.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Sandin and seconded by Mr. Christoph. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. So with the Public Financing Authority, which is a extraordinarily important entity within this whole structure. It's not an advisory body. It has the authority to issue bonds and levy assessments, and it has its own GAN limit. I mean, it's a real thing. So this is an area of the law that is imperfect because the EIFD is to be so fully integrated with our objectives as a community, and certainly for us, managing it in conjunction with our other efforts. I think our hope is that we'll be able to seek legislative changes or whatever to allow us, as we did with redevelopment, to have the city council be the same entity that is where the full membership of the council is at least not precluded from being appointed to the Public Financing Authority. But the legislature did not make by creating an option for 3 council members and then 2 members of the public, it did not waive the, what am I thinking of? The incompatible office threat for the public member appointment. So we really can't appoint only 3 council members. So I would like to appoint to the Public Financing Authority board myself, Mr. Ledesma, who's the founder of this whole concept, and Mayor Pro Tem Sandin, as well as from the public members to bring a little longer standing history to this, Mike McGowan, and the vice chair of the Economic Development and Housing Commission, to try to which has a role in this as well, and that's Nick Esquivel. He's actually here in the back of the room near the thermostat. And these would be for 1 year, pending potential legislative action, and it will also give us a chance to sort of figure out what this means. But we have to have the authority board in place at formation. So we need to have the board done tonight in order to proceed. But it's not a lifetime commitment, so we'll be able to make adjustments as well, over the year and beyond. So, and I know we will need to, but appreciate the willingness of folks to serve and to help to get this whole enterprise underway. But with a reminder to the authority members that we want to keep the authority as closely related, not closely held by the city and by the council as a whole. So,
You need a motion?
yes.
So I'll move the recommended appointments.
All right.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. All right, thank you. Congratulations, Paul, Aaron, everyone else that's working on this, and thanks to Mr. Esquivel and Mr. McGowan, who's not here, for joining us in that. All right, so council calendar, Ms. Berlin? Briefly.
Good evening again. So here's a couple of dates coming up that might be of interest to you. I thought at our last meeting that the following Friday was the last off the grid at the barn, but apparently it's this coming Friday, November 18th, is the final off the grid at the barn from 5 to 10 p.m. And then on December 2nd, on Friday, we have the annual community tree lighting ceremony at City Hall, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And Friday, December 9th is our City Hall holiday social from 1:30 to 3:30 in the Galleria.
All right, any questions on the calendar? City manager report.
Just briefly, I want to say tonight was a big night for our staff. Charlene didn't get much kudos on the general plan, but Charlene took that plan and edited it over the weekend, several weekends, so really appreciate her staying on this. We wanted to get this
We
done.
got all the kudos on the general plan. If we said David Tilley, we meant Cheryl.
Oh, you meant, okay, should we, that's the code. We also wanted to recognize the effort behind this EIFD, Paul, Aaron, Phil, Chronic Law Firm, big effort. Big importance for us to get this done by Mr. Christoph's last meeting. I just want to say on behalf of current staff and the previous staff, you have said many times that the sky's the limit for the city. So as we embark on these endeavors, we don't find ourselves constrained at all. So we appreciate your, real respect and of staff. It really has pushed us to excel and make you proud of us, and we're going to miss you a lot. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Questions on the city manager report? I was actually going to mention this in staff direction, but I think it's more appropriate here. So, and it's not in your oral report, but the written report we got on Village Parkway and stop sign at Locks. And I just want to flag it, not for that specific piece, but our experience on Jefferson, where we did the Jefferson widening project, and then through a series of mostly staff choices, installed a series of traffic signals, not unbeknownst to the council, but the council would not have necessarily have approved had they been put before us. And the challenge with installing stop signs and stop lights on arterials is that they have system-wide effects. So the extent to which a stop sign even reduces even slightly the time that it takes to travel using Village Parkway, over time it will reduce the attractiveness of Village Parkway as an alternative to Jefferson. And so the city manager's report gave us a good amount of detail about why the choice was made in terms of the discussion between police and public works. But there are actually larger issues at play when you're dealing with the major arterials in the city. And so I would just suggest that in the future that we have a broader range of policy input and advice about those sorts of choices, because a stop sign on an arterial is a very unusual thing, and it by itself it's not a big deal, but to the extent to which it makes Village Parkway like Southport Parkway, which is to say much less effective at drawing traffic off Jefferson than we had originally planned, it has much larger implications.
Okay.
So it's not a criticism or complaint, but just a request that in the future, as we're dealing with those issues, that we not see them just as a public works and police issue, but the planning issues, the general plan implications, the circulation implications of small decisions when you add a bunch of them up can have some significant implications. But,
okay.
all right, city attorney report. Do we have staff direction from members of the council? No future agenda item requests. Mr. Christoph, would you make the motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Well, second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries, and this meeting is adjourned.